Hey, what is up YouTube? It's Adam back here, and today I have the first episode of my making series. And for this first episode, I'm going to be making clone Captain Howzer as he appeared in the new Disney Plus series Bad Batch. Now, this series' main goal is to essentially document and provide explanations for how I make this figure and what parts and materials I use to do so, since I get so many questions about that on other figures that I've made. And so even though this episode that the Howzer appeared in a couple weeks ago is sort of old at this point, I thought it would be best to do at least one character from this show before it wraps up. So stopping any further ramblings, let's get into the base parts I'm using for this figure. And to start off, the helmet is an AV Figures AP2 ABS helmet, which aside from one noticeable defect on the side of the helmet, is one of the best AP2 helmets on the market in terms of accuracy. And accompanying this helmet, I'm going to be swiping some decals from this sheet right here, this Camino Security Guard, which is also from the from AV Figures. But yeah, I'm going to be swiping some of these decals along with the breathers on the helmet along with the visor. Just to avoid painting details that, you know, basically every other clone trooper has. And yeah, I really want to paint the arms though, just as a note or as a side note, just because I still have to sculpt on some details, which I'll get into in a minute. But looking under the helmet, I am using the new clone head, which as seen in the 501st Battle Pack and AAT sets, since I think in terms of likeness it fits Howzer pretty well despite the skin tone being a bit too dark. I also want to note that I'm going to be attempting to either find a hairpiece that works or sculpting one, since that seems to be, you know, like Howzer's main feature that everyone was so in love with. But I can't guarantee any results, since my sculpting skills can be best summed up by looking at the monstrosity of a hairpiece that I made for my Clone Wars Obi-Wan a while back. But yeah, so additionally, I couldn't really decide between the animated and realistic clone torso, but what really sold me on the animated one was just looking at the midsection, mainly this part right here above the belt. The animated one was more stretched out and the realistic one really wasn't. So I mean, I could see myself using either, but I just was being really picky. So yeah, so along with choosing the Clone Wars torso, I'm also going to be carving out the armholes, which are right here. I'm going to be using a Citadel mold maker, basically to just carve out some space so the arms can be a little bit looser, because I'm going to be painting on the side of the torso, and if you move the arm and you haven't, and it's still creating a lot of friction, basically it takes off the paint, so we do not want that. So yeah, finally we have the hips and the legs, which are both just monochrome white. And for the hips, I'm actually going to be using this pair, not the current pair that's on him, but this pair is carved out, so it leaves a lot more space between the top of the leg and the hip. And this is to basically do the same thing that carving out the armholes does, which is to eliminate the friction and allow the legs to move fully without any issues of scratching the paint. So yeah, that is the base parts, and my plan for this figure essentially is to first apply all the necessary decals to the helmet and seal it so they stick. And then I'm going to do all of the base clone armor painting for the arms, torso, and legs, like I've done for many of my figures in the past, like Thyre, and essentially marking all the black and white details. And then I'm going to be sculpting the shoulder pads, and then adding the color and the weathering, And all finished off with making the pauldron in Adobe Illustrator, which I will document that as well for you guys, and then sculpting and or adding a hairpiece if I can find one. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this goes, and I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as I'm sure I will. It's going to be a lot of work, but I am looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so here is the helmet, basically the base, details. I just finished spraying it as well with some sealer. If you would like to know, let me know in the comments exactly what brand it is. But yeah, so that is the helmet. I'm going to have to wait for it to dry, so I think this is a good time to start the other base details in the figure, including the torso, which needs to be painted on the sides. And I don't know if I went over this earlier, but this is the Citadel mold maker that I was talking about that I'm going to use to carve out the arm sockets, which really is easy. It's literally just, you just put it on the bottom, twirl it around maybe once or twice. You can see some of the material starting to come off, and you just got to keep guessing. You don't want to make it too loose, so just put it back. If it doesn't slide in that easily, it's probably still too not big enough, I guess. So do it a couple more times, slide it off, back on. It's a little bit looser. You just want to be able to basically have that gap there if you see it. And I think that's good. Any looser and it will probably be a little bit unmanageable. But yeah, with the other side now, just go around a couple times, wipe all the material off, and yep. Alright, yeah, so you can see there's a gap there now, which is good. And it's loose, which is also good. So yeah. So now I will paint the sides of the torso and pretty much just connecting the belt to make it wrap around. And then from there I'll paint the arms and the legs. So it's gonna be a lot of work, but I am ready for it. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed those time lapses. I'll try and get some better angles further down the line. But yeah, I'm still experimenting with it. But basically, we finished this. He has wraparound painted sides of the torso now. And yeah, so that is the torso. And then I did one arm on camera and then my phone decided to die, so I have both of them right here. You know, I debated if I was going to keep them two-dimensional, meaning just flat, sort of, or if I was just going to add a quick layer of Procreate on this white here and keep the black outlines just to give it more of like a look like this, like I did with my Thyre, which, you know, I kind of like. So I'm debating. I think I'm gonna do 3 sculpted shoulder pads, what I should say. So I'm gonna try that. If it doesn't work, I can just peel it off and sort of, you know, fix it, I guess, from there. But yeah, I also think the helmet decal just came out incredibly good looking. So yeah, I'll have the painting and other details added to that later on. But yeah, that is it so far. I think I'm gonna do the legs, and then well, actually I'm gonna sculpt the shoulder pads, and then I'm going to probably end up sculpting the hair, because I'll just have to Procreate out. I'll give it a shot. And yeah, I think that will be it for right now. Alright, so now that the legs are done, as you can see, with the full wraparound painting, even on the boots, I think I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to add any of the front, like, boots, the arches. I just don't really like how that looks, because it looks kind of clunky to me, because it's sort of... it's like representing the shape of the shoe, but then, you know, it's a Lego, so there's like a box outside of that, so I don't know, it's just weird to me, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so torso, legs are fully painted. The next thing to do is, you can see that the arm and this are just littered with fingerprints and rough edges, and so I need to sand down the sculpts, but I'm not entirely sure that they're dried yet, so I'm just going to probably wait a little bit longer to do that. And in the meantime, I think it's a good time to paint some of the back details on the helmets, and then probably by then the shoulder pads will be ready to be sanded, and I can show you guys what sandpaper I use. Alright, so this is the current sandpaper I'm using. Just look at it real quick. But yeah, so anyway, this is the base sculpt for the hair, and as you can see, that is just sort of like left over, but I'm gonna fill that hole in. I was debating on whether to actually like sculpt higher so that the stud head isn't as noticeable. But I think if I just fill that in and then just do the little, like, I don't know, like curls in the hair that are facing forward, I think it'll be good enough. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out so far. This again is just the base, so once this dries, I'll fill in the hole, and then I can, well, actually I'll sand it down first, and then I'll fill it in, and then I'll sand that down, and then I can start actually sculpting on the finer details. So yeah, I think it looks pretty good though, especially with the new clone head. But yeah, it's coming along. So far it's only been a day, basically, if that. It's been about 9 hours so far of on and off work. So yeah, it takes a lot to make these figures. And I had my thyre out, which I don't think I've ever shown in this lighting, of course. Like, I've always shown it just sort of like passively. But I need to do a review of this guy soon, because he is one of my favorite figures I've made. But anyways, yeah. So I guess I will start the helmet and then sand down the arms. So, yep. Alright, here is the first look at the assembled figure now. And yeah, the arms and legs are fully movable without damaging any of the paint. As you can see, if we move that, still stays intact. And yeah, it looks pretty good right now. Yeah, so I added the gray on the back of the helmet, and yeah, I added the white on the shoulder pads, and yeah, it's coming together, and this is completely smoothed out. I know it looks rough, but I promise you it is smooth to the touch. So yeah, pretty much all that's left is to sculpt the rest of the hair, and now add the color and then do the pauldron. So yeah, almost done, and it's only taken probably gonna take the rest of today, so about 2 days in total. So yeah, I will get right back to work. Alright, so now that he is pretty much assembled, I did the front part of the hair, as you saw in one of the last time lapses, but I still need to do the rest of it. But I think it's coming along pretty well. I'm not sure how smooth it's going to be, so I may need to sand this down very gently, because I know whenever I do little strands of hair like this, they like to pop off if you try and sand it too hard. But yeah, I mean, so far he's coming together, and you know, I wasn't sure about the color. I see in some of the images from the Bad Batch that his color varies. Like, I've seen people say it's more like a dark turquoise, and some people say it's like a lighter one. And so I don't know, like, if you guys have a problem with the color and there's that many comments about it, then I can, you know, I can always adjust it. It's a pretty simple fix considering how little painting is actually on this figure. So, but yeah, I painted even on the bottom of the shoes. So yeah, so I'm going to wait for this to dry, and then I'm going to finish the rest of it, and then I just have the pauldron. So yeah, should be pretty fun. Alright, so that was the hair sculpt, which I just finished. You know, I'm pretty confident about the front, but the back, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to sand it down and see, you know, exactly how it goes, because I'm not really used to sculpting hair, as I've said. But you know, it's not my worst one, so we'll see. But other than that, the figure is pretty much assembled, outside of the weathering that needs to be added. I mean, I'm pretty much done. The pauldron was designed as you guys saw, and it was then printed onto some fabric, and now it sits comfortably on his shoulders. So yeah, really happy with how this figure came out. And yeah, I think so I think I'm going to wait until the hair dries from the Procreate, and then I'm going to do the weathering, and that'll be it. And then I can finally do the review and wrap this up. So yeah, it's been a long 2 days. You know, I've just been sculpting and painting on and off. These clone troopers are actually a lot harder to, you know, actually like paint than I always imagine. I always undercut myself on time. So yeah, that is pretty much it for now. So I will see you guys in another time lapse. Alright, and here we have him fully assembled and with the hair painted and everything. So I'm honestly really happy with how this turned out. The hair strands turned out better than I expected, and they look better in the actual color they're supposed to be. So yeah, I'm really happy about that, and I'll just give everything else a quick spin, especially with the weathering. I like it a lot more. And in the reference pictures I had, I didn't actually want to add too much weathering just because in the reference pictures there wasn't that much on him, honestly, compared to some other clones I've seen. So yeah, it is done, and I am really happy, as I said, with how it's turned out. And you can still move the arms and all that. Added some weathering on the sides, and yeah, so that's Clone Captain Howzer. I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of Making, which again is the name of the new series. And yeah, I'm going to be leaving a comment down below to let you guys pick the next figure. I think this was a good place to start, and I am excited to see where this series goes. I'm going to try and release one every week, but we'll see how that goes depending on my schedule. So yeah, and just a thank you to everyone who is still watching this, and thank you for making this return to YouTube just so great so far. So yeah, that is pretty much it. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more. And this is goodbye, and have a nice day.